Hi and welcome to another video called Digging Deeper into Masks, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to be looking at two different types of masks. We're going to be looking at your layer masks and what's called a clipping mask and how they differ. And we're also going to explore how this all relates to selections and the dreaded channels panel. Well, all that to come. Let's get on with it, and let's do that right now. In this video we're going to go over what masks are and what they're used for, and how using them properly will supercharge your workflow. Now don't forget, if you're a fan of the printed page or want to work along with me, don't forget to check the more area under the video to get a free ebook and all my work files. Okay, let's dig in. Okay, now layers are probably the single most important addition to Photoshop since the original version. But layer masks run a very close second. Now the term mask isn't immediately understandable to somebody outside the realm of graphic design. At its simplest, a definition of a mask, it's a way to apply something to a very specific portion or region of an image. In fact, a mask is just another way of defining and saving a selection, as we'll see later. Now there are two primary types of masks. There are layer masks and there are clipping masks. Now these two tools are really closely related in concept but very different in how they actually work. Now let's start by discussing layer masks, which is generally what people are referring to when you hear them talk about masking in Photoshop. Okay then, how can we add a layer mask manually? Well, there's the layers panel, and down at the bottom here, this little thing, I always think it looks like a washing machine. If I hover over it, you'll see that it'll come up with, this is the add layer mask icon at the bottom of the layers panel. And if I click on it, it'll put me a mask on. Now if I want to delete the mask, I've got to drag from the mask, not the layer or the image. I've got to drag the mask, and I've got to take it and drag it in the trash can. And then I'm going to select delete. Now the other method is through the menus. I can go up to the layer menu and down to layer mask, and the two main ones are reveal all and hide all. Now the reveal all option is the white mask we saw a minute ago, so if I click on that, you'll see it puts a white reveal all mask on. Now reveal all means that anywhere that's white on this mask you will see this image. Okay, so let's just drag that in the bin again. I'll show you now. If I go to layer and layer mask and hide all, I get a black mask, and a black mask is hide all. The clue's in the name. It hides every pixel that's on that layer. Okay, so let's get rid of that and we'll delete it. Now a layer mask is something that you apply to a given layer to control the transparency of that layer. Now where the opacity, the layer opacity up here controls the opacity of the whole layer, a mask will control the opacity of a smaller part, a specific targeted part of that layer. So if you want the entire layer to be 30% visible, then you would lower the opacity. If you wanted just the left hand side, say, of a layer to be 30% visible, then you would use a mask. Now let's see how it works in practice. Here we've got a layer, and what I like to do is to add a mask to that layer. Okay, so whichever way I choose, I'm going to click to add a mask to the layer, and then I'm going to fill the mask with different types of colour. So I'm going to make sure that my foreground colour is set to black, my background colour is set to white, but it doesn't really matter about that, and you can do that quickly by pressing the D key and then the X key. And then I'm going to make a selection. I'll just use a very simple selection. I'm going to select the marquee tool, the rectangular marquee, and I'll click and drag and I'll make a selection. And then I'm going to fill that selection with the foreground colour. And there's a handy keyboard shortcut for that, which is Alt and Backspace, or Option Delete if you're on a Mac. And you can see initially what's happened is it's painted black on the mask. So now everywhere that's white, I can still see the image. This portion I've filled with black becomes invisible. Okay, I'll just Control D or Command and D on a Mac just to deselect that selection. And let's make another selection. Again, I'll just make rectangular marquee tool, make another selection, but this time I'll fill it with grey. So I'm going to do that from the fill command. I'm going to go to edit and to fill, and one of these drop down options here is 50% grey, which is very handy. So I'm going to click on that and it's automatically filled it with 50% grey. So now you can see that if I have 100% black, it gives me 100% transparency. If I've got some form of grey and I've got 50% grey, it's a little bit see-through. You can see it has got a little bit of transparency. And I'm not going to bother drawing another square here because it already is white, so there's no point me filling it with white. But you can see that where it's white, I can actually see the image. So I'll just deselect that. Now if we have a quick scoot over to the channels panel, you'll see now that there is an extra channel being added, and this is called an alpha channel. And this is where your selection is actually saved with the document. If you save it as a PSD file or a TIFF file, it's actually saved as a mask. So a selection is really the opposite of a mask, and the mask is an opposite of the selection. Let me show you how that works. So I'll get rid of that mask. I don't want that for the time being. And I'll just make another selection. So I'll click on the rectangular marquee tool, I'll make a nice big selection, and then I'll go and have a look in the channels panel. And you can see now there's nothing much happening because I've not actually done anything. I've not actually saved anything or put any colour or shade onto it. I've done nothing. So now if I've spent an hour, say, creating this wonderfully complex selection, then I want to save it. I don't want the chance of losing it. So I can do that by going up to the select menu and down at the bottom select Save Selection. It'll bring me up the Save Selection dialog. This is the document. It's saying here make a new channel, and all I need to do is to give it a name. So I'll call it my selection or MT selection. There we go. I've got my spelling back. And then I click OK. Now you can see nothing's happened here, but if I scoot over now to the channels panel, you'll see that I've now got my alpha mask, and I've got black for where the outside is and it's white for where the inside is. So this is the mask that will be saved with the file. Now if I deselect this, let's go back to the layers panel. If I accidentally deselect this, Ctrl D, and go, oh god, I've just been working on that for an hour and a half and it's gone. Well no, so long as you've got it saved in that channel. So let's go and have a quick look over at the channels. It's there, yep it is. Then what I can do is I can get it back. And I can do that by going up to select and down to load selection, because that will now be live because I've actually made a selection and saved it. And if I click on that, it'll ask me which one do I want to bring back. It's got the document right, but I want my selection, which is the preset, which will be under the line. And then I click OK, and back comes my selection. Now we can create a mask directly from a selection. So let me just deselect that just for something different with Control or Command and D if you're on a Mac. And let's pick the, we'll have a wiggly one. We'll have a lasso tool. So I'll make a wiggly selection. There we go. Now that selection has not been saved anywhere, but if I want to, I can actually make that create a mask for me. And you do that when the selection is live, and you can tell that because the little marching ants are marching around it. And then I go down and I click on the Add Layer Mask icon, and it automatically creates a mask for me. You can see now that the black areas are masked out to transparency, and the white areas you can actually see the image in the middle. And if I go and have a look at the channels panel, you'll see now that I've got the selection that I saved earlier that's still there, still in the file, and I've now got one which is another alpha channel of the wiggly one that I've selected. Okay, let's go back and we'll get rid of that mask. Now a common question is, well, why can't I just use erase? And you can. You could and you will get the same result. You could go and pick your eraser tool and have a decent sized brush, and you can paint away, and we're actually painting away the pixels. But, and this is the but, erase is actually throwing away the pixels. Once I've erased them, they've gone. I close down the document, I'll save it, close it down as a JPEG. Those pixels will not be there when I come back. And it's not the cleverest way of working. So I'm just going to undo that by going up to Edit and Undo, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Control and Z or Command and Z if you're on a Mac. And we're back to his image. And then we'll go and apply a mask. So now I'm painting with black on the mask. So let's have a quick look at that. I'll do that. Yeah, and you can see as I'm painting, it's actually cutting through to transparency underneath. Okay. Now at this point, it's important to know which is selected. At the moment, my mask is selected, so when I paint with black, I will paint to transparency. But if I accidentally click on that, you can see now that the mask is not active and the layer is active. And if I now paint with black, I'm actually painting with paint on my image. And that's not what I want to do, and that will in the end cause me lots of grief and pain. So we're not going to do it. I'm going to go to Edit and Undo that, and I'm going to click on my mask to make sure it's active. Now we've got his mask, and we save this image out. Everything's wonderful. If we then open this up again next week and say, oh no, I wish I hadn't done that, then if this had been erased, these pixels are history, they're gone. But now what I can do, I can swap my foreground colour to white, still select my paintbrush, but now I can paint these pixels back in because they've not been disappeared, they've just been hidden. And there they are, all restored to their former glory. They've never been anywhere. All we've done is we've made them invisible by painting with black, and then we've made them visible again by painting with white. And this is the beauty of masks. They are totally non-destructive. They are reversible. Another type of mask you might have come across is called a clipping mask. Now this is where we use a layer itself to determine the transparency of another layer. Now for this you stack two layers on top of each other, with the bottom layer being used to determine the transparency of the top. And instead of using black and white values like we did with the layer mask, clipping masks simply borrow transparency from the layers used to make them, namely the bottom layer. If the bottom layer has some areas that are opaque and some areas that are transparent, a clipping mask will apply these values to the top layer. Confused? Let's try an example to see it in action. Here we've got a two-layer document. We've got lake and we've got a layer underneath it, which is the actual lake itself. Now for this to work, we need the lake to be underneath. So long as this is a layer, if it's a background layer, you'll have to click on the padlock to get rid of it. But what we need is the text layer to be underneath. So I'm going to click on that and drag it underneath and then let it go. And of course we can't see it now because it's underneath the actual lake itself. Now what's going to happen, you can see at the moment we can't see the text. So if I just turn that layer off for a sec, you'll be see that here we've got some pixels and we've got transparency. And what we're going to try and do is use that to actually mask out areas of the layer above. So when we apply this as a clipping mask, what will happen is Photoshop will say, well, I will only show you a pixel on the top layer if there is a pixel immediately underneath it, which will be this area in the text. So okay, let's give that a try. So I'm going to bring that back on again, that layer at the top, and I'm just going to click on it to activate it. And now I'm going to create a clipping mask. Now there's a couple of ways you could do this. You could go up to the layer menu and down to create clipping mask. Or you can use the keyboard shortcut Alt, Control and G, or Option, Command and G if you're on a Mac. And if we click on that, hey presto, we have a clipping mask. And you can see that it is because the image has been indented a little bit and it's got this funny little arrow on it, which is the symbol for a clipping mask. And so here you can see now that the text on the bottom layer is defining where the opaque areas are and where the filled in areas are. But the great thing about this, it's not just a cutout, it's live in this text. So if I make sure I've got my move tool, I can actually move this image up and down in the text. So if it's not exactly positioned where I want it, I can reposition it to another location. Is that not cool? Well, that's it for this introduction to layer masks and clipping masks. I think now I need to lay down in a darkened room. So just to sum up, layer masks use values of black and white or grey to assign levels of transparency to specific parts of an image or group of layers, when clipping masks use the transparency of one layer to define that in another layer. I do hope you liked it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up or leave a comment under the video or share it with a friend or two. Now don't forget to check out the more area under the video for the link to the free ebook and if there's any source files. And please click the subscribe button at the end so when I upload a new video you are the first to know about it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.